2022 Fall Talent Series. Today we're welcoming Carl Dierschow. Before we start with his presentation, I'd like to talk about our sponsor. iHeartMedia is proud to be part of the Fort Collins business community and a sponsor of the Talent Series. iHeartMedia is home to 8 Northern Colorado radio stations, including 96.1 KISS FM, Big 97.9, 107.9 KBPI, and 600 AM KCOL, along with digital media partnerships to help drive consumers to your local business through streaming, mobile display ads, podcasting, and much more. Thank you to iHeartMedia for their sponsorship. Let me tell you a little bit about Carl. Carl is a small business coach located in Fort Collins. His business, Small Fish Business Coaching, has been an active chamber member since 2011. In addition to his coaching work, he's bringing his expertise in leading teams to the virtual and hybrid world we've had since the pandemic started. Carl focuses on serving owners and leaders who are committed to improving society through their practices. This includes for-profits, nonprofits, and all the other organizations in between. You can find out more about him on his website, smallfish.us, and his blog, www.valuesbased.biz.
There we go.
I should have read that before. So, Carl, take it away.
All right, thank you very much. I'm looking to see whether the camera adjusts to where I am. There, yeah, okay, so it's moving around to try to catch me now. Okay, we have a bit of a confusing situation up on the 2 monitors in front, but I decided I wanted to show you both what people in the room would normally see, which is the stuff over on the right here, and then what a producer might see. So we see over there, there's the PowerPoint slide presenter view, and then there's a list of the attendees. And so this is one of the things that we'll talk through as we get closer, but we don't want to get bamboozled by the technology here, because there can be an awful lot and can be a little bit overwhelming. What we do, let's see, make sure that the clicker works, because it was kind of flaky before. All right, it's going to be grumpy. All right, we always start with what is the purpose and goals of any kind of event. Is it about bringing people together? Is it about education? Are we doing team development? Or is it about inspiring, about building relationships? You know, when we say we have a meeting, there's a lot of these things going on, and we don't usually think about it very carefully. But when we're doing something for real, we want to think about it carefully and say, how important are each of these elements in there? Are there other things going on? Because at the end of the day, it's all about the people, not about the technology. So where does hybrid make sense? Well, first, I guess I should define hybrid, because people may not be real clear on that. Hybrid is when you have a mix of people online and in the room who are all trying to interact with each other. Okay, now we could go and broadcast this on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, but that's a broadcast. All right, there's really no interaction. I mean, I guess people could type in YouTube comments and great, but who's watching them? Who's interacting with them? I'm certainly not. So that's not really a hybrid situation. That's just what would be called simulcasting in the old world. Not sure if we use that term much anymore, but that's what we used to do with concerts. You know, you have a concert and then we put it on TV at the same time, and we have simulcasted it. And how wonderful is that? But we want, in the hybrid world, we want rich interaction between people. So, for instance, if somebody online makes a comment, I, as the presenter, would want to see that, all right, and respond to it. Maybe we've got a question and answer period. Maybe we'll have small groups. So we'll talk about that in a second. We start by thinking we have 2 groups, but it's really one audience. Okay, so in this example, I am the person in the room, and there's people here, any number, doesn't really matter. And we are connected to the outside world through Zoom because our life is Zoom these days. And so there can be any number of people who are out here interacting with this. The question is, why is the camera pointed at the wall? All right. This is part of what makes it fun. So let's. Have a look at the other camera.
See?
All right. Okay, so now we've got the camera in the front of the room. These setups can get complicated and sophisticated. And so that's why we want to be thinking through this in advance, not just making this up as we go along. Okay, so we have two audiences or two groups, but we want to treat them as a single audience. Hey, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
So if the presenter is in the room, then we're going to want to have people see and hear everything that's going on. Well, how do you see what's going on? In this case, we have a big TV in front of us, and you can see me, the person, Bull. You can hear me just because it's directly through the air, right? So we don't need any electronics involved to make that happen, unless we're in a large room. Okay, so if we have an audience of 500 people, we'll need some amplification so that you can hear the speaker. So we would do all the usual stuff, microphone, lapel, all that stuff. On Zoom, the people are hearing and seeing this because I'm sharing these slides on Zoom, which you can see because this machine here is another attendee on Zoom. So this is what people out in the real world are seeing. And they can hear me because we've got microphones in the ceiling, and those are the inputs into Zoom. So how nice is it that I don't have to wander around with the microphone here? We got a room that's really well set up for it. And this is one of the advantages of the chamber is to, they have this really quite sophisticated setup, and it works really well, and they're improving it constantly. So, as chamber members, we should be taking advantage of this, right? Okay, so that's when the presenter is in the room. Let's say that the presenter is out on Zoom. Okay, so let's say this computer here is the presenter. And so how do we get everybody else to be able to see it? Well, on Zoom handles that, right? It's like I've got the camera pointed at my face, and I've got a microphone of some kind in it. Okay, but for people out in the room here to be able to see and hear that, how does that happen? Well, we've got to actually have speakers. So in this case, we have speakers in the ceiling. So how do we know that those are working? Well, let's take my other user here, unmute him. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, demo. Hello. Okay, so that's how you hear what's going on out in Zoom land, and you see it here because they can share their slides with us. So it looks just like that. We can see their camera, depending on what they want to be showing. So we have the opportunity to have the interaction with the presenter now, and that was pretty simple. You notice that I added some complexity in there. I added a projection mechanism here, and I added some speakers. And so we've got to somehow hook those on to the computer so that the people in the room can see and hear that. Okay. But it's not just about having presentations. We're in the real world, and many times the purpose of the event is like to actually have the group interact and doing conversation of some sort, right? So Zoom offers some facilities for that. They have the hand raising thing, they've got chat, okay? We can put the chat up on the screen. Or we could have me as presenter see the chat, or somebody else in the room and say, hey, Joe out in Zoom land said something, and you know, here's what you might want to interact with. Okay, so we have the facilities there to do that. But now what I introduced is somebody who is like paying attention to this kind of stuff. As a presenter, I'm sitting up here waving my hands and saying all kinds of things. Am I paying attention to a chat window on a screen or something like that? Probably not. Okay, this comes down to mental bandwidth. And so that's one of the important parts about this is how do we keep from overtaxing people? Because I don't know about you, but I've certainly discovered that life in Zoom land is actually more draining mentally. Okay, physically, it's actually pretty nice. I attend a meeting from my desk at home and it's fantastic, but to be able to stay engaged for hours on end. Okay, I mean, it was hard enough doing an in-person meeting for 8 hours, but at least you have bathroom breaks and lunch, right? But in Zoom land, we're jamming things together and it gets really very mentally taxing. And so that's something we have to pay attention to. Okay. All right, so here is some of the magic about how it works. And what I did is that this is a setup that I use for my Rotary Club, actually, and because we've been doing hybrid meetings for over a year now. And so you can see the components. The thing about the chambers setup is the computer is hidden away over there, and the speakers and the microphones are in the ceiling, so we don't see them, and you don't see all the wires going to the TVs, thank God. So you know, it's all kind of hidden away. Here's what it looks like when you see all of the different components. So we have the central computer that's running the whole thing. So we call that the production laptop. Okay. It's hooked via a mixer to microphones. So I've got 2 wireless microphones, which is cool because we can pass them around the room, and that works well. But that means you have to have a wireless microphone receiver. So there's another bit of hardware and more wires. We've got a camera, and it's live, so you can see. I cleverly named this second computer, right? So we've got the camera. So this would be, you know, trained on the speaker. That's not threatening. It's looking up my nose. I don't like that. Okay. So we got the camera working, right? And then depending on the size of the room, we're going to need an amplifier so that we can drive some speakers. Okay. In this case, the amplifier and the speakers are in the ceiling. We don't know where they are. They just work. It's magic. How fabulous. And then how the sound works out in Zoom land is the thing you've been doing for 2 years now, which is you've got a headset or you're using speakers on your laptop and you've got a microphone. And, you know, we've gotten over that. So it's just normal stuff. People out in Zoom land don't have to do anything special. So the video, like I said, we've got the camera here. So that's the black camera there on the left side of the picture. Okay, and that's hooked directly into the laptop. the reason why this is a real camera and not one of those little cheap $69 webcams is because this is much higher quality, okay? And if I'm in a meeting, I want people to actually be able to see stuff, not just blurry images on the screen, right? And so we invested in a real camera. Works really nicely, but then that means you have to have a tripod for it, right? And then on the output side, you normally have that going to a projector, and then that projects onto the screen or onto the TV. Yeah, that works perfectly fine as well. In our case, we wanted something that was for a little larger room, and so we weren't able to put up a TV, but we can bring a projector in. Okay. All right, so what is the production laptop? All right, so first thing, it's a little confusing because I'm pointing to that thing as the production laptop. For the meeting we are in right now, it's actually not. The one that's over in the cabinet is our production laptop. It's the one that's doing all the heavy lifting. It's managing the meeting. It has the list of attendees up there. It's showing the slides. So it's doing the hard work in this case. But this I was pointing to because you can see how it's hooked to the other things. All right, even though it's not playing that role in this meeting right now, it's just showing you what people out of the land see. Okay. If your Wi-Fi is unreliable, you want to have a hardwired connection. Remarkably enough, I see many cases where the Wi-Fi is actually pretty darn reliable. So I'm pleased at that. I think people have been beat up enough that they realize that coffee shop level Wi-Fi is not going to be good enough for running a meeting for hours. And so you gotta invest in real Wi-Fi. So you're going to be running Zoom as the event host so that you have control over all this stuff that we see over here on the left screen. Be running PowerPoint, we're running a web browser. If we're going to maybe show a YouTube video or something like that. So that's why we have a web browser up there. And then I like having two monitors. And that's why I set it up this way, actually. So on the left monitor, we see what the production person would be seeing. Normally, attendees in the room would not see that. Okay, so it's messier, right? And then on the right screen, that's what people in the room would see. And it's the one that's being shared out on Zoom right now. And so it's what people out in Zoom land are seeing. Okay, but that's why we would have typically two monitors on a computer. The way I have it set up, you notice this computer here does not have a second monitor. The second monitor is actually the projector. Okay, so it really does. I can see what's being projected. I can see what's on my laptop. I've got two monitors, and works remarkably well. Anything that's going on the projector, we send out to Zoomland, and it's done. We just share it that way. Okay, and when somebody out in Zoomland wants to share with us, then we go back into what would be the normal Zoom mode, where you're seeing something that somebody else is sharing, and so that's what would appear up here on the right-hand screen. Okay. Yeah, and the one note, the more stuff you run on this computer, the flakier it's going to be. So I always do a total reboot on that computer before every event, just to make sure it's clean. I don't want crap going on in the background. And, I'll have been checking my email to see whether somebody mailed me slides at the last minute. So I shut that browser down because you never know what browsers do. And so, just have to be conscious that you don't want any more stuff running on there than necessary. Okay, a word about breakout rooms. We've all experienced breakout rooms on Zoom, right? Okay, so the big comment is, sorry, we can't do them the same way. And the reason is really simple. It's because the people here in the room don't have individual Zoom identities. And that's the way Zoom breakouts work. If I send you to room 1, I send you to room 2. But here, I can't do that because you have no device sitting in front of you, okay? Now, that said, I did have a group that set it up so that the people in the room would physically go to breakout rooms. Each of the breakout rooms had a laptop that was already set up to do the breakout. And so then we could have breakouts both physically and on Zoom. It was complicated. And oh my goodness, how many ways I could go wrong if it doesn't work. There's a lot of moving parts, but you know, if it's worthwhile, maybe that's what you do.
Do you mean like I went to another part of the room and the laptop was there and then that was
Yeah.
room
So
three,
you might
and then I-
left this room physically, like we would have done in the olden times, right?
And then I'm now
And-
part of room 3.
Yeah, and then we assigned that laptop to room 3 and
Okay.
you know, it's like, but you can see, oh my God,
Oh,
that's
complicated.
That's complicated, right? So, you know, if it's worthwhile, fine, but for most of us, what you do practically is we separate into 2 audiences. So the people on Zoom, you know, if we have 50 people, great, make 10 breakout rooms. Boom, boom, done. It's really easy. And then if we have 50 people in the room here, we do the normal things, say, okay, you guys go over there, you guys over there, and talk amongst yourselves. And we'll all come back in 10 minutes. All right, so that works pretty well. It's an unusual situation where you would have to try to combine those things. So I personally don't recommend it. But you know, some people have tried it. Okay, so now this producer role, because I kind of describe myself as doing this producing thing with the production laptop. And what does that mean that I'm actually doing? Okay, so I'm setting up the audio and video. So this setup here is like too complicated, but I came a few weeks ago and I did a dry run. So I spent an hour just playing with this stuff because I hadn't used these cameras before. And I was like, okay, what's it really going to sound like in the room? And when people talk in the room, can people out on Zoom hear it? And it was remarkably great. So that's fantastic. And then this morning I came an hour early so I could set up and found out that the mouse wasn't working. And so, you know, all that kind of little piddly junk that just drives you nuts, right? But you don't want to leave that to the last minute, because if I had some multi-megabuck speaker coming in that I want to impress, I don't want him standing around for 15 minutes while we're pushing buttons. You know, I want to say, here's the microphone, start hitting and make it nice and effortless. But we don't have a multi-megabuck speaker, so we're over there. Okay. Paying attention to what people are seeing and hearing. So I walked you through that. So what are people in the room seeing? Okay, is this still working? What are people hearing? Can they hear the speaker? Well, the microphone crapped out, the battery died, better give them a new microphone. What about the people on Zoom? What are they seeing and hearing? So that's the reason why I have my phone hooked up to this meeting right now, because you can see that we've got the screen is being shared, the little speaker video. Okay, so I can see, is Carl in frame? We're using that camera up there in front of the room right now. And I can, you know, as I showed you, I can speak on this and have it come out to the speakers. And then I can listen and say, are the people hearing this, the person who's speaking? Okay, and I can, it's a little bit delayed, but you know, that's going to be normal. right? So that's what the producer is doing, is sort of constantly running on that. Okay, and if there's special things like spotlighting the speaker, let's say that we now have a speaker out in Zoom land. It's like, well, I want to have him appear full screen. Okay, so let's do that. Let's make that full screen, and so that people in the room can see the person. Well, you know, that's something we got to play with. There's a function called spotlighting, which can highlight that person for everybody in the meeting. Or we can say pin that person, which means just on our screen, to say that's the person I want to see. I don't want to see any of the other people.
Where did you find that at?
So good question. Let's go find it. So let's say Yvonne has been kind of silent here. If I bring up the menu on Yvonne's picture, you see that there's a spotlight for every one option, pin, which is the thing to say only I want to have her on my screen. And then there's some other things like I can chat to the person, I can make you the host, all of those kinds of things. Okay, I can kick you out of the meeting, that's fine. So I hope you don't mind. I picked on you for that exercise. So, okay, so what was I just doing there when I was flipping between those screens? Right, it's interesting to know that what I was doing is I was saying, I want the computer to focus back on these slides again, okay? Because otherwise it thinks that all my keyboard input and my mouse input is going to the Zoom application, which doesn't know how to advance the slides. So I have to toggle over to looking at the PowerPoint again so that I can progress through the slide. And that's a trick that so many people don't know. It's just such a weird Windows thing. And I have no idea how it works on a Mac, honestly. Okay, queuing up configuration changes. So what would be a configuration change be? So one example is that the speaker has changed from being in the room here to being out in Zoom land. Okay, well, that's a change in the configuration. So I want to spotlight that person. I want to unspotlight that person. I may have to mute somebody if there's like background noise and stuff like that. So, or let's say that we're going into a Q&A period. All right, in Q&A period, maybe we want to be looking at the gallery of everybody who's in the meeting. So we have, 5 people up there on the screen. We've got 3 people here in the room, and we're going to kind of interact as a group now. All right. If I want to, I could put the chat up on the screen so that everybody could see the chat. Or I could tell people, go ahead and raise your hands. All right. Well, you guys can raise your hands physically. People on Zoom land can do the equivalent thing. It's down on the bar at the bottom of the screen under reactions. There's a thing that says raise my hand. Okay, and so it'll put a little symbol up on top of their picture. So then we can have a conversation, right? Say, okay, you speak now. You speak now. I'm going to answer a question. All those kinds of things, right? So that's a configuration change.
So you can like trigger the gallery view for everyone who's on the Zoom call. To switch from like the single view of whoever the speaker is to everyone views the gallery.
It's weird. I wish they had a way to do exactly that. What you do is you say, I'm going to stop sharing my slides now. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's stop sharing. Okay. So, and what I can do is say, we're not doing the slides anymore. So I'm going to move this Zoom screen over to where everybody can see it. Okay, because remember, you guys only see the right-hand screen. The other one is magic. So, okay, so we see the attendees now. Fantastic. You know, if somebody raises their hand, it'll show up there on top of their picture. How cool is that? But that layout you're seeing with the participants on the right side and the gallery on the left side is something I control on that computer. It isn't controlled by anything else, okay? So each person, so you notice that this computer down here has the gallery, but it does not have the list of participants. Because this is a phone, this thing is still on showing the speaker, okay? And I can swipe it to get to the gallery, but I have to do that. Okay, it's not going to do it automatically. So it's like you have some controls, but not everything. And part of it is because everybody has a different device. Okay, and they have different, and everybody has different preferences. You know, maybe I want to be having closed captioning on my computer. Well, why should I force that on everybody else? You know, let every person decide whether they want the closed captioning, because for many of us, that would be just nagging and annoying. For the people that need it, it's fantastic, right? And this list of participants, most people don't care about that. They might put the chat window up or something like that. Yeah. Okay. All right. Happy Halloween found out how to change his or her name. Okay. All right. So let's go back to. All right. There. I need to move this onto the other screen so I can see it. Share PowerPoint. Okay. So now we're back into the mode where the people out in Zoom land are seeing the slides that we shared over here on the right. Okay. So then, you know, what else is the producer doing? Handling the recording. What I've started doing is I don't turn the recording on and off. I just turn it on. And then I do all of the rest of the stuff after the fact and say, chop off the beginning, chop off again, chop out the breakout room section because there was nothing happening there. And so that's my preference because honestly, I forget to turn the recording back on after I turn it off. And that's really annoying to lose the entire second half of the meeting because I forgot to hit the button. So waiting room, if you're using the waiting room, we were using the waiting room when we started up. And then as we got closer to 10:30, I just turned it off so that people would Zoom straight into this meeting rather than having to go through the waiting room.
Where's that feature?
If you look at security, there's a little thing there, says enable waiting room. How about that? Okay. And so you can do that like during the meeting, which is really nice. Because, you know, maybe this is a slightly more secure meeting. We're going to discuss sensitive stuff. We could then turn on the waiting room so that anybody who shows up has to be approved and special. Maybe we do that. Yeah. So it's nice having that ability to do that. Okay, let's see, muting people. We all know there's lots of cases where we have background noise for various reasons. And, you know, if the speaker is going to blather on for the next half hour, let's just mute everybody else so that we have a nice clean recording. Watching the chat, watching people who are raising hands, things like that. And then if we're going to be doing polling, then we want to be queuing that up so that it's nice and clean when the person says, okay, we're going to run a poll now. If the button says, okay, then you're not trying to find it in all the weird menus. Showing videos, setting up breakout rooms. Some breakout rooms can get complicated if you want to put specific people in specific places. Other times it's just like, put random people in there, I don't care. And then other kinds of transition points. Okay, and so that's the work that the producer is doing. Most of it is not seen. Most of it is, and should not be seen behind the scenes. Okay. Let's see. Switch back. All right. So here's a list of some of the configurations the one would typically have. So let's say at the beginning of the meeting, we're going to have people like welcoming each other. Okay. Well, if we want to have people in the room welcoming people out in Zoom and say, hey, I haven't seen you for a month, then we should put the gallery up on the screen so that we can see their faces and, you know, say, hi, you know, how you doing? You know, how's the kids? And this is an important part of these events, right? We don't just come into things totally cold and say, sit down, shut up, and wait for the event to start. That's an experience like watching TV. We don't want that. Maybe there's going to be some passive slides. So Yvonne did the advertising at the beginning, which is fantastic. We could have also had slides up here that were played. We could share those slides with Zoom Live and say, you know, things are going to start in a few minutes. Here are some slides that'd be interesting.
I had slides, I just didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't know you were going to take it over.
right. But you know, you can do that kind of stuff, and that's something you
background
can.
music.
Well, if I were to play a video, you can hear the video, right?
Right,
Okay, because we can share the sound.
right.
There's also an option to share just the sound from the computer, which is kind of cool. It's over in the advanced options when you're doing sharing. But I think it's the share computer sound. And so for some of my events, what I'll have is I'll have a little background music going on, and you know.
Can you show it to us here?
Well, it's I don't know that I have any music running. And
Would it take over the sound of the speaker? Would people be able to talk over it?
well, if you have it really low. Okay, so let me do it on this computer. All right, so I can play this music. Okay. So, where are we hearing that? I didn't share the sound. The reason is because being captured as the microphone into, but you hear the quality is, and that has to do with the way that that Zoom manages microphones. It tries to eliminate echoes and to conserve bandwidth, and shut off background noise, and that typically doesn't work well for music, right? So what we do with this instead is we say, well, I'm going to share. Okay, yes, you have disabled screen sharing. Golly, we like how to allow screen sharing. That would be good. Share screen. There we go. And let's stop sharing from that computer so that we can share the sound from this computer. All right, so share, advanced, computer audio, share. Downloaded it. I use this as a background for something else.
It's on your laptop.
Yeah.
And it's on your.
Yeah, it could be a YouTube video playing, anything that gets center. And so now what you're hearing is this at higher quality. Fantastic. Much better than we have. Okay, so I'm sharing there. Oh. Yes, there's a fair bit of running around when we have these spaced out. That's the thing.
That's probably why you'd recommend having someone run production.
Right, exactly, right, because I am being both presenter and the producer. Thank God I know how the production stuff works, so that I get, but you know, it is mentally taxing. I have a slide about that. Okay, so let's say that we go into introductions. So Yvonne's going to stand up and do an introduction in the room. Okay, so we want to make sure that the camera is on her, and that if we need microphones, that she's mic'd up. Okay, and maybe we will have her spotlighted on the screen. So rather than doing the gallery view with everybody, what we're going to have is we're just say, nope, we just want the picture of the introducer person, and that's going to be full screen because she's going to say important things for 2 minutes and then pass it off to the speaker. Okay, but we're not going to do slides now. This isn't the kind of event where one would have slides for that. So we just want to see the person speaking. Then we have maybe a local presenter like me. Okay, so need to show the slides from the laptop, the production laptop, the real one, or you could have a second one. So, you know, let's say that I've got a podium up in front. I tell people, yeah, we'll just connect you in as another Zoom user, and you can share your slides and everybody will see them just like normal, because it doesn't matter like if you're in the room or not. And so that's often what I do if somebody has a Mac, is I just say, just use your own laptop. And, you know, everybody knows how to come in as a Zoom user. So, because we've been practicing that for 2 years. Okay, and so that we can have presenters and we can spotlight the person and say, yeah, we're just going to have the image of that one person, not the image of everybody else that's on the meeting, because they're just going to talk for half an hour or whatever. Okay, then we're going to have our group discussion where you go back to the gallery mode on the screen. Maybe we're looking at the chat, maybe we're monitoring other things. And then we've got the breakout rooms, and I talked a bit about that. The way I prefer to do that is to keep them as separate audiences and to do the breakout exercises. And it kind of means that you design the breakout exercises a little bit different, because when people are sitting around the table, you can take notes on a piece of paper. When people are sitting around on a Zoom breakout, then you say, well, open up a Word document and start taking notes or whatever you want. So it's close, but not exactly the same. Okay. So that is. Okay. So this is always something that I do with any kind of event that has any complexity to it at all, is to write down an event planner. Okay, so it's driven by the timeline on the left. And I do include like 15 minutes before the event, everybody show up who's on the presenter team, or something if you're facilitating a small group exercise or whatever. I want you to show up 15 minutes so we can just, you know, hang out and make sure that everything is working. Yeah, I got to put a new battery in the mouse. I got to reboot my computer because Zoom was doing something weird, right? Happens all the time. So, you know, having 15 minutes so that it's not super rushed as people are starting to come into the meeting. Okay, then right at the time, we're going to have Jocelyn welcome everybody. So we're going to spotlight her in the room, and she's going to do overview slides 1 through 3, and she's going to introduce Chris. Okay. Then Chris is going to come in, and she's going to do slides 4 through 11, but we want her spotlighted So that everybody on Zoom land can see a nice big image along with the slides that she's presenting. Then we're going to do our polling question on slide 12. Chris is going to say, okay, we're going to do a poll now, and please hit the button. Boom, there you go. Now, you know, we could see a poll happening up here on the screen, but how do we in the room answer, right? So we have to think through that. It's kind of like the breakout room exercises. Do we have people raise hands as one would have done in the olden times? You know, to say, how do you respond? You know, yell out your answer. Cool. You know, whatever works for you. But you have to think through this as you're designing these things, right? Is what's the experience of the people in the room and what's the experience of people who are remote, right? And then, you know, we're going to summarize the responses that people said in the room, and, you know, we'll have a little verbal discussion about why it was necessary to do this poll. All right, then we'll go back and do slides 13 through 22 and spotlight Chris again, and then we're going to go into QA mode. So it's like, all right, it's time for questions now. If you have questions, please raise your hand if you're on the line, raise your hand if you're here in the room, and I will answer a question for you, and then I'll answer a question from him, and then I'll answer a question, right? You know, that's the way we do it. So anyway, you know, this is the way one does it. And this is pretty simple, right? I mean, if we added in more complex things like play background music and share a video, and, you know, all of this kind of stuff, it starts getting more complicated. But it doesn't have to be terrible. What I was just looking for is the key transition point that the producer needs to know about. Okay, because if I've got a poll coming up at approximately 13 minutes, that depends on how fast Chris talks, right? And so it might be 13 minutes, might be a little before or after, but I know it's slide 12 because on slide 12 it says poll. And so I'm watching the slides on a window that people can't see, and I am queuing up Zoom to do the poll. Right, so that when she says we're going to do a poll now, I hit the button, so launch poll. Boom. Okay, so that's why you want to have those, because it's key action points that the producer needs to know about this. This is also super useful for everybody else who's involved in the whole event, because they know, okay, are we on track or are we not? When do I have to make sure that I'm not in the bathroom because I'm the next speaker? You know, we said that it was going to be at, you know, 1 hour 12. And so it's like, all right, I've got to be ready to speak. You know, I've got to have my little lavalier on and all that junk. All right. So people who do live events are very familiar with this kind of concept. And it's what's going to make them happy. So if you've got somebody that's doing a Zoom production, well, the same thing, you know, you want to have kind of the plan of attack for the entire event, top to bottom. Okay. So, a bunch of things to remember. There's more visible in the room than what's on the camera. Okay. So, for instance, the people out in Zoom land are seeing the presenter and the attendee because I have the camera way zoomed out so they can see it. But you notice that those images are really, really tiny. Okay, so if somebody is snickering at what somebody else said, we can't see that, right? Or we can't see the body language very clearly. Right? I mean, if I make big movements, sure, you know, people can see that. But you know, if I'm doing small movements or give somebody a wink, you can't see that on Zoom. There's more audible in the room than what's caught on the microphones. Now here we have the microphones in the ceiling, and sometimes do a really good job at picking stuff up. But still, if you whisper to her, people in Zoom land probably won't hear it. They might hear that you're whispering, but they won't hear the words. Okay, and so we have to be conscious about that. the people out in Zoom land can easily get disengaged from what's going on. All right, we've all been on the Zoom side of this for a million meetings, right? And how many times are you sitting there checking your email while you are in a meeting, right? We all do it. Okay, and it's very easy to mentally disengage. So we have to design things to keep people's attention. And maybe we say, you know, this is an important point that I'm making right now. And people wake up and it's like, oh, well, then maybe I'll listen to the next 3 sentences and go back to sleep. Okay, it's easy for me to forget the people on Zoom. Because in this case, they're behind me and I don't see them at all. Right, so if one of them was trying to catch my attention, I'm totally lost. Okay, but it's also easy to forget the people who are in the room because now my attention might be focused and it's like we've got our gallery of people up here and we were having some good discussion, everything like that. I kind of forgot these people that were back in the room, right? And so this is one of the challenges for a presenter to keep your attention alternating between these audiences and to be thinking about, well, so for instance, I pointed to the left-hand screen. The people in Zoom land do not see the left-hand screen. Okay, so I have to verbally describe what I was talking about. Right, all they're seeing is the stuff that's in the right-hand screen. So, you know, that takes some careful design. All right. Need to clearly document everything about the configuration. So just so that you can see what I'm talking about. So I have this is the hardware setup for basically what I have there. Okay. And this is because I've got other people who are doing the configuration, not just me. I've got a diagram about how that magic mixer works. So I can talk to you about that if you're interested in more detail there. And then I also have a software diagram. Software diagram ends up being really simple, actually. It's like the camera goes as the camera input into Zoom and the speaker output goes to the mixer, and that's it. So, you know, but when I went in and did my practice session here in this room, I had to rediscover how are things hooked up. Fortunately, it like totally makes sense. And they have the computer in a cabinet so that people don't mess with it more than they should. Okay, testing everything before the meeting. And then after you start Zoom, test things again. Because anytime you add a new piece of software, sometimes things break. You know, it's like, well, the last person that used this computer, they were using this webcam here at the top of the screen, not this cam. Okay, got to change it. So you know, you have your little mental checklist you go through. Ding, 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 ding. And yep, everything's working. And you know, after a while, it gets to be pretty mechanical. And, but it's easy to forget stuff, so that's why having a checklist is good. And then being able to use a phone or another computer to verify the experience. Okay. And I like using the phone because the phone experience looks quite a bit different than when you're seeing it on a computer. So you notice that right now on the computer, let's make this full screen. I've got the computer set up so that we have the gallery on the right side of the different people, and then on the left side, it's whatever is being shared currently, right? But on my phone, I've got the slides being shared and the bulk of it, and then they have the speaker as they overlay. I don't see the other people unless I go looking for it, okay? And so you have to realize, you know, different people are seeing different kinds of things, and a lot of that you don't control. It's dependent on the device or what their preferences are. Okay. So, got to talk about overbud. it's a real thing, honest to God. This kind of thing can really freak you out. So, you know, it's like, just keep things as simple as you possibly can. If you're not really needing to use a feature, don't use it, because you're just introducing things that can go wrong and you can forget, and, you know. Test and verify everything, make checklists, and have a sense of humor, because things never go according to plan. And, you know, actually, this is one of the nice things about Zoom events right now, is people do have a sense of humor about it, because, you know, most of the time, things aren't perfect. You know, most of the time, there's always something that goes wrong, and some little thing, and it's like, oh, my headphones stopped working. I don't know. What happened there? It's like, this happens to us constantly. You gotta have a sense of humor about it. It's like, yeah, you know, we did the best we could. You plan as much as you can, and then, you know, hopefully you can stick to the plan, but there's always going to be surprises. So, okay. I think, yes, that's it. Okay, so we have a time for questions. Let's go back into gallery mode here. Stop sharing. Gallery. Gallery to the right screen. Why did it do that? No, not sure what it's trying to do. I think this is one of those Windows 11 things. Yeah, there we go.
So
Okay, so questions.
one question I have is, I saw you play around with it when you tried switching from that camera and that camera.
Yeah,
How you can have more than one camera you can switch between?
yeah.
And is that just, like, if you're just running it from your laptop, you don't have the mixer, but you have that camera and a third camera, does it just need to be plugged in like USB?
Yep.
Or?
Yep, so this camera here is hooked in via USB. Okay, so it's actually this wire right here. And on Zoom, the little up arrow next to the stop video button. Can't do it standing up. All right, you see that it has 4 different cameras. Okay, so that's one camera, that's one camera. There's the one that is sitting at the top of the screen on the laptop. And then the USB VCam is something that they have as like an auxiliary thing, but I wasn't using that at all. All right, on this laptop here, I've got 2 cameras. So I have this one, and I've got the one at the top of the screen. Okay. And, you know, the one at the top of the screen is great for somebody that's sitting within 10 feet of it, right? But if we're sitting 20, 30, 40 feet away, and the quality is generally not that great. I mean, they've improved a lot. I gotta give them credit. And then, you know, my phone here has 2 cameras. It has the front camera and the rear camera. So yeah, what you do is you go to your video selection panel and pick which one you want to do. So if we switched it right now to the back camera. All right, so there, so we're using that camera in the back of the room right now. And it does a pretty good job of following people's voices, which is awesome.
Okay, and then when you switch cameras, will it automatically switch audio, or because the audio is hooked up to the ceilings, it'll always stay to this audio?
It's totally separate.
Okay.
Okay, so to Zoom, audio and video are 2 completely different things. All right. So if you have a camera that happens to also have a microphone driver in it, fine, but it's basically two devices in the same box. But in this case, the camera is here, the microphone is probably down here someplace, right? But I have it set up so that this becomes the microphone and this becomes the camera. Right, in the room here, they have, I think, just the ceiling microphones. Well, no, I think they showed me they have the ability for a wireless microphone as well. So let's go and see what kind of setups that they have. Okay, so we can send the sounds to the TV. We can send the sound to the computer itself. And then we're currently using echo canceling speakerphone, which is the ones in the ceiling, right? Under microphone, echo canceling speakerphone is the microphones in the ceiling. And then, not sure what microphone array is, but it may be the standard one that comes with the computer. Okay, so you can select all of these independently from each other.
Okay.
Maybe two Zooms, so this is, I've only done
Yeah.
probably 10 Zooms total in my life, so. Learning as I go.
Yeah, well, so what I've done with new groups is we just have a training session that we run through and say, let's just try it. Because I have found the best way to learn all of this stuff is just to try it. Just play with it for a while and say, what happens if we do this? And you're like, oh, that's not what I expected. It's like, no, why did it do that?
Karen has a question.
Yeah, Karen.
So I have a question. You know, the setup that you have, how much what is a good brand and about how much does it cost?
So let me give you an appreciation for what the equipment is. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so we've got. Can you see the projector I'm showing here?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not focusing, but there we go. Okay, so we have projector. We've got the mixer here. We've got the laptop. We have two wireless microphones and a wireless receiver. Then I've got a carrying case for that and a little wagon to cart all this stuff around because it's constantly going in and out of my car. And then what you're not seeing is the camera and the tripod. And all of that, we went for good, solid quality. So it's about $4,500. So, you know, not cheap, but on the other hand, you don't have to go to this extent depending on the configuration, right? The reason why we use the mixer there is because we want to have the ability for multiple microphones in the room. One for the speaker and one that we are passing around for Q&A.
What brand do you recommend for projector?
This one, we wanted one that has a high level of output, very bright, because there's some possibility we might want to use it outside. And we wanted like a high definition one so that when we project people's images up on the screen that you can actually see them. And so the one I've got there is called the Optima, OPTOMA. It just happened to be a pretty reasonable deal. I have nothing vested in them, but it's been good, reliable, and then of course you've got a million wires around. There's even more than what you're seeing here, because right now I don't have the projector hooked up, and so there's some more wires going on. So that's part of the hassle, keeping all this straight. So what
Okay,
else?
thank you.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay.
So if you didn't have these two cameras in the room, would you use that actual
Yeah.
camera as like one of those?
Yeah, sure, right. So if I was using this as the camera, I'd say, well, okay, so while we are having some conversation, I'll sort of leave it on that. While the speaker is speaking, we're gonna zoom in on him. Okay, but you see, I had to do that physically,
Mhm.
right? The neat thing about this is they got a remote control for it, which is very cool. So let's see, we're using the back one. So let's see, we can. Yeah, well, there we go. Right, so these kinds of cameras are really nice, especially because you just put them up and then nobody can touch them.
Mhm.
Okay, the worst that they can do is to break the remote or something like that, but they're not going to be mucking around with it. And so if you're in a general purpose room that a lot of people are using, it's great to have that kind of thing. So that it's up and out of the way. I needed to have this because I'm not in a room where I can assume that.
Mhm.
Okay, we're talking about a hotel conference room. So, the other thing I wanted to show you, because the chamber has it, is this OWL device. Okay. And so let me take it out. All right, so what this is, it's actually really quite cool, quite clever. It is a camera that points all directions at once. And it will follow and highlight whoever it thinks is speaking at the moment. So it has microphones in it all the way around, and it has a speaker in it. All right. So basically, if I just hook this up to my computer as the input and output device for both audio and video, well, it doesn't have video out, so you would still have to send the video to like a TV or something so people can see it, but it has the other pieces. The problem is, this is designed for a pretty small conference room. So maybe 10 people sitting around in a circle around the device. It does great at that, especially if there's not that much background noise. In the room, this size is pushing it, okay, because it's going to get confused about who speaker is, and it can't really zoom up very well on somebody that's 20 feet away. And so it's, you get kind of a, it's a small blob that you're seeing on the screen. So it's not a great experience, but for a small room, this can be a fantastic device. Okay, you do need to have a computer, you do need to have a monitor of some kind. But other than that, I mean, it's like very self-running. I've been very impressed with it.
And people can borrow our OWL, I think.
Yeah.
So if you need it, we have a couple.
Yeah, so, I would, spend some time playing with it and see how it works. Because there's a lot of situations where it's an ideal kind of solution.
So if like you're having a board meeting around like a circle table and there's like one or two people who have to zoom in, like that would be a good option.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we use it for the leadership team for the health sector partnership. So there's like 10 or 12 that can make it. And then there's about 10 of us that are on the Zoom. And the only time it doesn't really work is even in that smaller group, if a bunch of people are talking at once and then they're laughing, we don't get all the details. We hear the
Right.
laughter, but we're not sure what they're all talking about. You feel like you're out of the loop a little bit, about what they said. But if one person's speaking, it's super, it works just great.
Yeah, and this is just part of the limitations. I lived through a time when we were doing the equivalent with a speakerphone sitting in the middle of the table, right? So we'd get 10 people sitting around a table and a big speakerphone sitting right in the middle of it. And then somebody goes and says something, and the people on the other end are like, I didn't hear at all what they said. And it's just like, I heard something. And then all of a sudden you stop forgetting about the people who are out remote. Okay, so it's the 10 of us talking to each other, and all the people who are out there might not even exist, because they were just silent. And so, and that's where doing things with video, when we have images on the screen, can really help, because that helps people to stay engaged, not only remotely, but here in the room. When we can see somebody out there and they're, eating lunch or whatever they're doing, we can tell if they're paying attention. That makes a difference for us feeling like we have a relationship.
Well, Mary and I were at an event the other day and they played a video on the laptop and they had to use a microphone
Mhm.
to have it, the sound of it come out.
Yeah, they didn't have it set up.
They didn't have it set up, and it's a very new building with supposedly new technology. I was kind of surprised
Yeah,
that
they
they
didn't
did that.
I don't know if it was the building or they just didn't have it ready. to
Well,
go.
the thing that people do not know, and so it's good to mention, that thing about sharing the sound that I did, you have to do that when you're sharing a video. Otherwise, people are just hearing, so let's say that I was playing a video on the TV.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Okay, I can share that video on Zoom, fine, but the sound by default does not go through. So what you're hearing is the sound coming off the TV, going into the microphones and ceiling,
Right.
which, as we heard, was garbage. Okay, because it's trying to do, okay? So let me show you what that is. Okay. So when we're sharing something, okay, so what I did is I brought up the share screen option that's at the bottom of the screen. There's two boxes that say share sound and optimize for video clip. Okay, and what that does is it also sends the sound to the people out in Zoom land. And that's the step that people forget.
Yeah,
And honestly, I have those turned on all the time.
I was gonna say, why wouldn't you? Have them just
Right,
turned on?
I just turn them on and leave them because, it doesn't hurt anything to have them on. If you're, like my PowerPoints, they had no sound on them. Okay, but if I was sharing the sound, who would have known? Right? It's not like it was shutting off the microphones or anything like that. It's just, so, it's a good practice, whenever you share things. First thing in the meeting, just go down there and click the box.
Mhm.
And then, even if you don't use it, that's fine. It does reset it in every meeting,
Sure.
which is why they're unchecked right now.
No, that makes sense.
But that's a good question, because that's a very common one that people do not know about.
Just
But it
seems
makes it
so
for
3
a
years
totally
ago.
different experience.
Well,
Yeah, it's like, well, obviously they didn't care enough about me to share the sound, so I'm watching things happen.
they did that.
Well, they started it and then they didn't have it loud enough, so then they had to back it up to start it again, and then they put the microphone as close to the speaker as they could, and I thought, oh, this just seems so 3 years ago.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and with all these things, just play with it, okay? Just go and spend some time and, get the multiple devices going on, okay, you bring your laptop over here, I'll bring my phone over here. We'll see what
I
it
really
looks
like
like.
the backup of the phone, so you know what other people are seeing, and that makes
Yeah.
sense to me. That's like a good idea.
Yeah, because it used to be early on that we would have the Zoom hang in the middle. And we wouldn't know it because we were watching the slides. Okay, and so, but you could see with the phone, that it's like, oh, it stopped moving. Oh, okay, something, have to go reset something, I guess.
I remember early on during COVID, there was a weekly statewide meetings when I worked in long-term care, and there would be 500 of us on a call, right? And they couldn't mute people. And this woman starts talking to her dog, and she just loves her dog, and she's going on and on. And the speaker is like trying to, excuse me, ma'am, excuse me, and we had to just wait because they couldn't mute her. You know what I mean? And now you can at least mute people, right? You can
Well,
shut her off, right?
That used to be a real problem with those teleconference calls where somebody would put elevator music on because they had put their phone on hold.
Oh,
And so they didn't know, and you can't talk to them because their phone is on hold.
Right.
Right, and so having some kind of comfort monitor like that, and it's so easy, I mean, it's just dialed in as a Zoom user. You notice though, I do have headphones on it. And the reason for that is that if I take that out, then it's gonna start echoing
Echo, yep.
whatever I'm talking about here. Okay, so that's to
So
make
you
sure
do
that.
that instead of muting your device.
Well, the thing is that I might want to check to see whether the sound is coming through. Okay, and so if it's muted, then you gotta go through the rigmarole, right? Okay, but I do have the microphone muted on.
Do you ever use the whiteboard?
Not very often. I haven't been a big fan of that, and it's just because of the kind of things that I do. So, people, there's all kinds of great tools. I've been so impressed by what's been happening with education, because teachers have no budget, of course, and they've had to try to keep kids engaged for the last 2 years. And so they come up with online games and fancy stuff. I should show this to you, because this is pretty hilarious. Okay, so let me bring up where do you guys hide your web browser? I guess we're gonna use Edge. Okay. So. Okay, and then let me go and share this. So people online can see. Okay. Okay. So this is something that's free and somebody just made it up. And the idea is that you click on it and then it picks a winner. Okay. And the neat thing about this, you see that list of names over on the right side? You make that up. You can type in whatever you want to, and it can be, I have one that I'm running that's like 30 things long. And it's like exercises that you can do when you're on a Zoom call. So facial exercises and arms and stuff like that. And it's like, that is so cool. Very, very easy to use. And you can see that on my phone, I'm seeing that exact same thing because I shared the screen, right? And so, it makes for a great experience, and it's just a very simple thing to help discussion along when people are on Zoom all the time. Yeah, so it's amazing the kind of stuff that's out there. So there's, games and mazes and all kinds of stuff. Well, we got a few minutes. Any other questions we had? Any online? Diana, Karen? The silent Yvonne.
Nope, I do not.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Anything
I'm
here?
good too. Thank
All right.
you, Carl.
Oh, my pleasure. Any other things that you guys have been pondering?
You answered lots of good information. Thank
Playing
you.
with it is gonna be my thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so,
Meeting in a few weeks.
well, and what I would do is just sort of say, okay, so what's going to happen during the meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, what are the different kinds of things that are happening? And then say, well, and so let's suppose that I use that camera, which I got, that kind of work, and would it look different if you use that camera? How does it do with tracking me? So if I walk around, does it track me? Oh my God, it does. How cool is that? Right? And how do you know that unless you just have time to play with it?
Right.
What, we're going to read manuals? Come on, give me a break.
So,
All right,
great.
well, thank you, folks.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your
Thank
time.
you, Carl.
And,
Just put in one quick little thing, so thanks to Carl for our session today, designing your hybrid Zoom event. Thank you to iHeartMedia for sponsoring our talent series. And next week on Thursday, November 2nd, so exactly a week from today, we have a wonderful speaker, Sarah Van Degna. She's a private practice clinician, and she's going to give us a wonderful session. She shared with me that a lot of some of her clients that she works with have a lot of opportunities to talk about what it's like to be multi-generations in a workplace. And so the session is keeping up with change, how businesses can accept and maintain the new generation of workers. So she works with a lot of younger people. So I think she'll have an interesting session for us. So if you'd like to join that talent series, just go to our website and register for that on Thursday, November 2nd. And our last session is micro internships for the Fort Collins community. It's actually a program with Colorado State University called Parker Dewey, and it's where businesses can hire students for micro internships. You can hire a student for 5 hours, for 10 hours, for 20 hours. Let's say you needed somebody to do some graphic design. You actually go onto the site, you can look through some resumes, contact the student and decide to hire them for short term because you have a project, or you want to hire a full-time student at some point or a new grad, and you could try them for these micro internships. So Parker Dewey. So that'll be on Wednesday, November 9th. So those will be the last two in our fall series. And again, thank you, Carl, for a wonderful
Wow, my
session
pleasure.
today. I learned a lot about Zoom, more than I ever know.
More than you wanted, right?
No,
Yeah.
good stuff. So thank you so much. Awesome.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you.
If you wanted to sit here and poke at the equipment and all.
Well, that's it.
And then the chamber is, you can use this space whenever with all those.
Yes, anytime. And you can solve-
Yeah, how cool is that? Yeah.
Carl,
Yes,
can I have your contact information, please?
yes, it's carl@smallfish.us. So CARL@smallfish.us.
.us?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a bunch. Appreciate you coming today.
Thank you.
All right.